You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast. This is the show where you get the best tips, tricks, and nutritional hacks to help you and your family get healthier. You'll also hear what works and what doesn't work so you don't have to waste your time and money. All right, let's get started.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tony Martin Jr.
And I'm Dr. Tony Martin Sr.
And this is the Doctor Is In podcast. And in fact, this is episode 101. So 101 episodes of, we've been doing this for a while.
Yep.
And, we've enjoyed the first 100 and we're going to enjoy the next 100. If you're new to our podcast, we got a lot of information and a lot of old podcasts that you can go listen to. And, we're very thankful that you're listening to us.
Yeah.
And we're glad.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, we're glad you're along for this ride. So today, let's talk about a couple of new studies that were just released within the last few weeks. Now, we're recording this podcast in the month of September 2017. So these are studies that came out in August and early September of 2017. So we'll talk
They're brand
about those.
new.
They're brand new. And they're talking about the fad that won't go away, which is ketogenic diets.
Yeah.
We've been talking about ketogenic diets for a long time. It's something that we've been using in our clinic for a long, long time.
Yeah.
We wrote a first book about that years ago called the Serial Killer Diet. We have a brand new program, weight loss program, called the Serial Killer Revisited program, where, a lot of people have gone through the program, lost a lot of weight. They fixed a lot of health issues.
Yeah.
So we've talked about ketogenic diets, and supposedly this was just a fad. It was going to go away, but it's picking up steam because, in research they have, if you look at the amount of participants in a research in the study, they call it the N number, and there's an N equals whatever. Well, ketogenic diets, there's a lot of N equals ones. There's a lot of people's testimonies that are saying, hey, look at this thing, this way of eating has changed my life. So today we're going to talk about those two studies. And then we'll also talk about, what exactly is a ketogenic diet? What exactly does that mean? And how do you get into ketogenic diet? And we'll talk about that. So,
and the reason it works.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So first, let's talk. Maybe before we even talk about the studies, let's just talk a little bit about what a ketogenic diet is in the first place. So, if I were to ask you to explain to me, what a ketogenic diet is.
Well, I always give a simple explanation in my office, right? I love the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid. Because I'm a simple guy. I always tell people that I'm a simple guy. I'm a cause and effect guy. I want to know, I want to keep things simple for me. And, don't complicate life for nothing. And I like to explain it to my patients because the word doctor means teacher. You ought to be teaching your patients. And, gone are the days, and we talked about this in our 100th podcast, about the days of Latin and, me doctor, don't ask questions. People are way beyond that today. People want to know. People get on the internet, and I love the internet for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's some stuff on the internet that's stupid, but generally people are smart, and I like people. My patients are our patients are very smart.
Yes, they're well educated.
Yeah,
they understand their body.
Yeah, and they know more about nutrition than their family doctor does.
And that's why they get frustrated when their family doctor.
They know more about cholesterol than their family doctor does. That drives me crazy. But anyway, so if you want to know, here's the simple explanation I give about the ketogenic diet, okay? Well, your body, what is ketosis? Your body has two gas tanks, right? You're either burning carbs as fuel or you're burning fat as fuel. And your body, your body works in two ways. It functions with two types of fuel, carbs and fat. So if you cut your carbs down...
Well, let's talk, before we even go any further, let's just talk about what it's like to live on a carb-based fuel tank. Mm-hmm. And what that looks like. Yeah. Let's talk about that really quickly because that's interesting. That's a great analogy that, you're either going to burn carbs for energy or you're going to burn fat for energy. Now, we function best when our body is burning fat for energy. Mm-hmm. Carbs are not the greatest source of energy. They're a great source of
quick energy,
but they burn off quickly. Mm-hmm. Or if you can't use it right away, you end up storing it, right? So a carb-fueled person has to eat a lot. They need carbs before activities, during activities, after activities. They got to constantly be carbing up in a sense, right?
Yeah, because it's I use the wood stove analogy, right? If you're trying to, your metabolism is running like a wood stove, right? Paper and twigs are carbs.
Yeah,
you're not going to heat your house with that.
No,
it gets the fire started, but and ketones are fat burning, because that's all it means. Fatty acids are burning, right, as fuel. Well, ketones are just logs on the fire. I mean, those are simple illustrations, but
that, I mean, that's good.
Like you say, a carb it's bang. You get it. It burns. If you don't burn it,
it goes into storage.
It goes into storage, and that's it's turned into fat, right?
Because one of the problems that people have today is we consume too much energy in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't.
You don't need all.
We don't need it, so we got to store it. We got to put it somewhere, so we store it in fat cells.
Whereas liver, suitcase.
A fat adapted person, or somebody who's burning fat for energy, they're basically. A lot of times what ends up happening is they're taking their own fat cells, they're breaking down their own fat cells. So they have, and that's the thing, fat cells are really stored energy. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. It's basically, carbohydrates are, that's been converted, basically stored into fat, right? Fat cells. And there's a fancy word called lipolysis, which is just basically a way of saying the breakdown of fat for energy. So when you are in lipolysis, you are basically burning fat for energy. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. And when you're not in lipolysis, you're basically storing fat. You're storing, carbohydrates into fat cells. So you want to be in lipolysis. You want to be burning fat for energy. And carbs essentially stop that from happening, right? So when you are fat adapted, you are tapping into your fat cells for energy. And you just feel better. Your energy's more consistent. So that's basically an airplane view of the difference that goes on when somebody is burning fat for energy versus somebody burning carbohydrates for energy. So the next question then would be this: how do you switch over from being a carb burning person to somebody who burns fat for energy? How does that happen? Is there a magic number? How does that happen?
Well, look, it's such a good question, but I always tell people, look, the world's changed, right? And we don't eat like we used to eat. I say the number all the time because the numbers don't come from me. The numbers come from the government, right? The stats can, or the American government, they give out what people are eating. 160, 180 pounds of sugar a year, because the food industry denatured food. What they did is they took fat out of food, from cereal to pancakes to yogurt to milk to whatever. What did they do? They took the fat out of it, and what did they do? They added sugar to it, right? You can't buy a yogurt today. Well, most yogurts.
They're hard to find. In a sense,
and they're
right?
denatured them, right? Like yogurt is sour milk. So what did they do? They said, well, fat makes you fat. We take the fat out of it and we put sugar in it because high fructose. So what happens? Okay. Why are we burning so many carbohydrates? Because we're eating so many carbohydrates. The world's changed. I saw it happen in my own practice. I've been in practice 43 years. And what have I seen? The change is we're carboholics. We eat 160 pounds of sugar, 160 pounds of flour.
Well, and it's interesting if you look at even if you analyze the diets over the years, one of the things you see is that people are getting massive percentage of their calories from carbohydrates now, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the standard American diet, they call it the SAD diet because it is, sad. Mm-hmm. They're consuming 50% above carbohydrates. So for 50, 55, 60% of their calories are carbohydrate based. And the sad thing is that's how kids eat. Yeah. Kids are even higher than that.
Yeah. And you know what? The world today, and it's a pet peeve of mine, because a lot of people will talk about, well, I'm a vegan or a vegetarian. And no, look.
Yeah, we don't care.
I mean, go for it.
You gotta, and you're right. One of the problems with that is that they end up eating way too many carbohydrates.
Way too many carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Because they're not that analogy of logs on the fire.
Yeah.
They're very deficient in my analysis of their diets, and I do an analysis.
Because a lot of times, and you see this all the time. You look at you analyze people's diets, and a lot of vegetarians, they eat a lot of processed foods.
Yeah.
I mean, they get a lot of their energy intake in a day from eating a lot of carb-based stuff. And, we've talked about this off the air before, but even you look at, for example, somebody who's gluten intolerant, right? And there's so many people today that have either have celiac or they have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. But the reality is they switch to a different... rather than if you're having a hard time with gluten, going and eating more real foods, they end up eating a lot of these
engineered foods. With
food
no
companies
gluten,
have jumped on top
and
of
they
this,
just
right?
Load them up with sugar.
Some of the worst food that you can buy are gluten-free.
Yeah.
I mean, there are still some people that we meet that think that gluten-free food is healthier. We tell people you're just going to get gluten-free diabetes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no difference. You're going to get it. I mean, it's unhealthy food.
Yeah.
So you're right. I mean, one of the things that's happened today is people are definitely consuming way more carbohydrates than before. And, we talk about this as well. Low carb is a spectrum. Right? People, it can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Medicine will define low carb as basically even around 30% of your calories from carbohydrates. So for some people, that could be 170 grams of carbs a day. But when somebody used to be eating 500 grams of carbs or 350 grams of carbs a day, that is definitely a lower carb diet to what they're used to.
Yeah.
But okay, let's get back to the ketogenic. So generally, we see people become fat burning. They get into ketosis. They're burning ketones for energy when they get under that 50 grams of carbohydrates a day.
Yeah.
Now, what's also interesting is that if somebody is really insulin resistant, they got to eat even less than that. They can't get into ketosis with even 50 grams of carbs. Their body way overreacts. They produce insulin for a long time, and they can't quite get into ketosis, so they have to go down even less than that. Some have to go under 30 grams. Some have to go under 20 grams. It just depends on, it's very different. Some can get into ketosis eating 50 grams, no problem. Right? So the bottom line is, though, they enter into ketosis, meaning they're burning ketones for energy, meaning they're using fat for energy, right? So that's...
rocket fuel. It's so much better for you.
Yeah, it's better for your brain. I mean, there was these myths before that your brain needed so many grams of carbs, your brain functions on sugar and all that kind of stuff, but they found that's not true. Your body makes what it needs. Yeah. It can either get it right away from food or your body will make it. That's the bottom line. So that's, I guess, an easy way of, or kind of a quick summary of what a ketogenic diet, and they're big now. A lot of people are talking ketogenic diets, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking about that. And a lot of people, and let me say this as well, because this is something that we see a lot. Just because somebody is in ketosis, it doesn't mean they're going to lose weight. We talk about that in our Serial Killer Revisited program, why that is. I mean, just because somebody is burning ketones for energy does not mean that they're going to be losing weight.
Yeah. Well, there's other factors, right?
They'll be healthy in a sense. They're getting the benefits of the ketones.
And they're lowering their inflammatory markers, and they're doing a lot of good things by eating that way, right?
But a ketogenic diet does not mean weight loss. It doesn't mean that at all. So for a lot of people it does, but some people will struggle on that. But there are ways around that as also that they're doing wrong. So let's talk about those two studies that came out, because we've talked about this off air, and they were relatively big studies that were done. So the first one was done, and this one was interesting. They found that a ketogenic diet basically reduced mortality and preserves memory in aging male mice. So this was a big study done on mice, and they found that the ketogenic diet basically preserved their memory, and it helped them live longer. And what I found interesting about this study myself was that this was an every other week ketogenic diet. So they weren't on ketosis full time. It was what they call a cyclical ketogenic diet. They were on and off of ketosis, right? Which goes to show you that just doing it, even if you can't do it all the time, still has some benefits.
Yeah, big benefits. Your cells love it, by the way. Your body cells love when you're burning fat. It's a much better fuel. I tell people it's like turbo fuel, right? Rocket fuel for the body. It's a tremendous burning fuel.
So again, here's another study that shows that eating a ketogenic diet is basically going to help you live longer and have a better brain. And I'm going to read you a quote from somebody here on these studies. It says, so 2 independent studies published today in the Journal of Cell Metabolism raises the hope that ketogenic diets, if followed, do more than just slim waists. Because a lot of people, I mean, that's the number one reason why people will.
That's their motivation, right?
Yeah, is definitely that. They also appear to improve the odds of living longer and remembering better. Because let's be honest, there are a lot of people who may be living longer, but their brains ain't living as long as their body is.
They outlive their brain, right?
Yeah. So
why would you want to do that?
So the idea here is that it not only does it increase lifespan, but it also increases the lifespan of your brain. And then he says, but these were studied in a mouse. But then he goes on to say, so the same effects have yet to be proven in humans, and plans for that are in the works. But in the meantime, self-experimenting biohackers are collecting anecdotal evidence all around the world. And we see that all the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we see in our clinic all the time. People's brains are getting better. They're healthier.
All their markers for metabolic syndrome get better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, right? I mean, the proof's in the pudding. I always show patients before and after all their markers, they improve.
Yeah, it is probably one of the number one things you can do for your health.
Yep.
And the nice thing is that the studies are showing that you don't have to be doing it all the time, because that's one of the things that we hear. It's like, I got to do this the rest of my life. But if they can incorporate it into their lifestyle where they do this for a period of time, and we see this a lot, that people that do that, generally even on the days where they're not in ketosis, they're still not consuming nearly as many carbs as they were before. So they're still eating
sugars,
a low-carb diet.
Yep.
We consider anything to be a low-carb diet, anything that's less than the amount of carbs that you would store in your liver, right? If you can if you can never fill up your liver, we consider that, you and I off air, that's what we would consider a low-carb diet. So that's anywhere between, roughly about 120 grams of carbs and under. Some people 150, depending on the person. Anything under that would be, by today's standard, considered a low-carb diet. But the reality is that I can't think of anything better that you can do for your health besides incorporating some form of a ketogenic plan. It doesn't have to be full-time. Some need it longer than others. Diabetics, they got to fix some cancer. They got to definitely do that. But there's not a person who wouldn't benefit from some kind of cyclical ketogenic plan, right? Every other week, a couple days a week.
And that's why the serial killers have been so popular too. Right?
Yeah, that program that we developed is a cyclical ketogenic program, so that it really combines the best of both worlds. We developed something we call the carb window. It's the amount of time that that you can eat carbs in a week and still get the effects of a ketogenic diet. It's something that you've used in the clinic forever. If you were to start listing all the testimonials, it would take us forever to go through that. I mean, you see the results every day. So, but it's, So I guess the point of this episode here would be, if you haven't incorporated a ketogenic lifestyle at all, you're missing the benefits of what it can do for your health, what it'll do for your brain, and what it will do for quality of life. So that's something that you definitely should be looking into. So we want to thank you for listening to this episode. Again, if you're listening on iTunes, if you can go on there and just leave us a real quick review, that would be super beneficial for us. And we would really appreciate it if you just leave us a quick, honest review, because that, again, allows Apple to show it to more people. That's how they kind of work their algorithm. And, we really think that the information that we provide will benefit a lot of people. So we just want to get as many people to hear this as possible. So again, if you haven't left us a review, we would like that very much. And if you have any questions, you can email us at info@martinclinic.com. And, we have, we answer a lot of emails, and we have tremendous staff, health coaches that, well-trained, that are there to answer questions. And so we would love to hear from you as well. So again, thank you for listening, and have a great day.